Hello viewers. Climate change is a significant and an immense issue nowadays. We can witness several awareness campaigns, protests and rallies on the issue. Well, sometimes these rallies and protests take a controversial phase. Today we are going to look into a similar case where on the 13th of April, an Australian climate activist, Deanna Coco, famously known as Violet Coco, associated with Fireproof Australia, blocked a lane on Sydney Harbour Bridge for 28 minutes with a flare in one hand to draw attention towards the climate change issue. The ramifications were that recently she was found guilty of breaking the traffic rules and misusing a flare. She is sentenced to 15 months of jail time. The sentencing has led to protests by several climate activists in Australia in support of Coco. As per the climate activists, these laws question the very democracy of the state. Let's have a quick discussion with the diplomats, human rights activists and climate activists to get to know their point of views on the issue and also on the question that do these laws question the democracy of the state. How do you see the action by the law and the government in the case of Coco?
I believe that these laws are incredibly concerning, facing up to $22,000 or 2 years in prison for blocking a road or other, train lines and things like that is completely disproportionate when these are acts of protest and should be considered as people actually exercising their right to freedom of political speech and movement and assembly, which are rights that are protected by international humanitarian law.
There's a whole body of writing and thinking about the nature of a liberal democracy, one in which civil liberties are respected. And most of the theorists, nearly all the theorists, say that protest is an important part of what makes a democracy function properly. And protest doesn't just mean standing behind police barricades and politely holding up placards. It also means actually doing things that challenge powerful groups.
Yeah, it seems a vastly excessive show of force. It seems designed to intimidate people who are wanting to take nonviolent direct action.
And if protesters want to put our way of life at risk, they should have the book thrown at them, and that's pleasing to see. We want people to be able to protest, but you should do it in a way that doesn't inconvenience people right across New South Wales.
What do you think about the way of protesting? Is it questionable? Is it correct way to protest? Keeping in mind that the highway was blocked for 28 minutes and it was disruptive for the normal people who were going to their work.
It's different ways to look at this. And one of them is in terms of whether the motivations of the activists are reasonable. And the activists believe that climate change is going to lead to massive death in the future unless it's addressed now. And therefore they would feel, and I think reasonably so, that it's an emergency and they need to alert the public to do things which will alert the public and also pressure the government. So that's what you'd say is a moral analysis. There's a moral side to this, but there's also what we say a tactical or strategic side to it. So from the point of view of activists, they're sitting there saying we need to do something about climate change, and what can we do to get publicity about it? And they just, some of them decide to block traffic or to glue themselves to artworks or various things, and that's a difficult one to measure because it might come in on one aspect of climate change which is different than other forms of civil disobedience.
Mani, being from Amnesty International, do you feel like that human rights violation has happened in this case?
Sentencing Violet Coco for up to 15 months prison for engaging in her human right to protest is a violation of international humanitarian law. Australia is signatory to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which protects our right to political speech, to freedom of movement and freedom of assembly and association. And Amnesty International condemns the sentencing and stands with Violet Coco.
What is your message to the government or to the fellow climate activists?
In terms of activists, I would say encourage activists to think strategically, and that means thinking through a whole range of possible options and evaluating what they do to see, is this the best possible thing? Maybe try something different, see how that works, and learn from the experiences going on all across the world.
Young people will continue to demand a better future. These scare tactics won't work. We might have to change our strategy, but that's okay. The cause is important enough that we need to keep fighting, and that's what we'll do.
I would urge the government to listen to the people of Australia, who are very clear in our message that we want urgent climate action. And I urge them to uphold all of our human rights. The climate crisis is a human rights crisis as much as it is an environmental crisis. And all of us here, whether we're in Australia or around the world, we have a right to live in safety, and we have a right to a safe and livable future. And the climate crisis is threatening that right now.